All right, so this morning we're going to start going into Chapter 19, but we're just going to go through the beginning of it. No excuses. I'll just show you what I've done, okay? This is what I'd asked you to do. So right now I've rewritten the program. So notice customers, employees, orders, order details, categories, products, product vendors, and vendors. Now, a couple things about this. All right, first of all, I wanted to be able to use the same global methods in both files, but I had problems, so I had to create a new one. That's not what I wanted to do, but that's what I did do. All right. It appears all the records and stuff that are in here appear to work. If you take a quick look on here, you may or may not be able to notice, but like all my IDs, I made them labels, meaning you can't change them. I laid this out. Now, did I lay it out perfectly? No. I actually did spend some time trying to lay it out and make it look halfway decent. All right. So, again, the employees table looks pretty much like the customers table looks. They're pretty close anyway. The orders table doesn't look too bad. All right. The order details table, again, doesn't look too bad. I'm going to show you how to format that in just a couple minutes. The categories, again, there's only two things in it, so there's not much to say about that. Products, what I want to do, and I didn't have time to finish this, but what I'd like to do is, if you notice up here for the product image, right now it's a text box. I'm going to see if we can customize that and actually make it the picture of the product. All right, because it doesn't make much sense to say product image and have a URL there. That doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So that one is laid out a little bit differently. I wanted room here for the actual image, so I pushed this stuff over from where it is on the other pages. All right, the product vendors is right here, and the vendors is right here. Now, what you may or may not notice if you look up on the screen, because I want to show you what I've changed so far. We're only going to go through the first part of Chapter 19 right now. But a couple things that I have changed, such as, well, notice when you go to products now, it's formatted with currency format. It's not hard to do. We're going to talk about that in just a second. All right. Then when you go over to the vendors, is it vendors? Yeah. Notice it says vendor, city, state, zip. Well, this isn't filled in anymore, because what I've sent you this morning is a table of all 50 states and their abbreviations. So now when you look here, what we want to do is this. Can you see that? So what I did was I linked this up to the states table that I've just sent you. All right. So for instance, this was Washington, so I can come in here and manually do it now to Washington like that. And I can change it to anything else I want to. And you might say, well, you could have done that anyway, even as a text box. That's true. But now you're basically stuck to these 50 things that are in here. All right. So, all right. So to start with, then let me show you. This is what I emailed all of you. And what I'd like you to do, please, right now, is to get into Sql Management Studio. Get into that. All right. I'd like you to be here. Don't worry about this. This is what you're going to do in just a minute. All right. Can everybody do that? Please just get into the Management Studio. And once you do, if you look up on the screen here, I want you to right mouse click on your sales orders table and choose New Query. That's it. That's all I want you to do. And I'll give you a second. Hopefully everybody can catch up quickly. What's that?
Mine is taking a while.
Yeah, that's why I said, we're not in any hurry. We will be done with the lecture, etc., by 9 o'clock this morning. So if you have not yet gone in and recreated this project using where you're dragging out the fields individually, it'll give you some more time to do that. All right. So again, once it eventually, hopefully, comes up, you might have to open up your databases, but find your sales orders. That's right there. right mouse click on it and choose New Query, please. And that'll bring up a new query window as you see right here. Also, what you're going to want to do is to open up that file that I sent you. It's a simple text file, but I don't want you to do anything with it right now. I just want you to open up that file. So once you do, it'll look like this. I made this morning. It's amazing. All I wanted was, I wanted a file that had the states in one area, then underneath it, all the abbreviations, but all of them had them together. So I had to go find an Excel file and parse it out myself. It wasn't bad, but it was just kind of a pain in the butt. And then I had to set all this stuff up. So like I said, it wasn't terrible or anything like that, but that's just the way that I set it up. Now, what we're going to do, if you look up on the screen, please, even if yours hasn't loaded yet, once you open up that new query window, the first thing I want you to do is just highlight these first 5 lines. This is going to allow us to create a brand new table in our database that's called states. As you can see, it has 3 fields in it. A state ID, which is just an integer, which will be between 1 and 50. So 1 will be Alabama, 50 will be Wyoming, etc. I just did it using alphabetic order. All right. Then it'll have the state name. So again, you can see Alabama, etc. And then the state abbreviation. The one we care about is the abbreviation because we've set that up as a 2-character field already in our schema. So we're going to do that. So has everybody had a chance? Has yours loaded? Yes? All right. So highlight these 5 lines, copy them to your clipboard. However you do that, just those first 5. Don't do all of them, please. All right. And I'm taking for granted that you're in SQL Management Studio, and then you open up, so you right mouse clicked and you chose New Query, and you've got something that looks like this. Paste that in. So it should look like this. Now, I'm not going to run it because I already have a states table. I could drop it and add it again, but it appears to be working fine. I really don't want to do that. All right. Now, this morning, I had the old auto increment in there because I forgot and I was using the syntax from MySQL. And it wasn't working. And I was like, what the heck is wrong with this? So, of course, I just looked up online. Oh, yeah, you use identity here. And I'm telling it just to start with 1 and go up by 1. I mean, to me, that made the most sense. So if you've got this here, just click your green button up there that says execute. And then down below, once you've done that, you should get the message down here that says that it worked, for lack of better words. All right. If all that worked, did anybody try it and it didn't work? All right, then remove what you've got here in this query. Just highlight it all and hit delete because you only needed that one time. All right, then go back to the file that I gave you. Now highlight from lines 7 through 56. That's all 50 of the states. So highlight all of that. And now this, hopefully this makes sense to you. Let's just very quickly, and I mean quickly, look at it. So we're saying insert into the new states table that we just created. We don't have a value here for the state ID because we've already said it's an identity or an auto increment field. All right. So state name, state abbreviation, state name, state abbreviation for all 50 states. So if you've highlighted all 50 of those lines, again, copy them to the clipboard. Again, go back into SQL Server Management Studio and then paste that in. Now, for whatever reason, we're getting a bunch of errors here, and I think a lot of them at least are spelling errors, but I'm not sure, but it works. So once you've got all of that in, again, hit your execute button, and you should get 1 row affected, 1 row affected, 1 row affected, and if you looked at that, you should have 50 of those in there. Now, if you tried doing it, and if for some reason it didn't work, please raise your hand. All right? Once you've done that, highlight this thing again and just delete that. To double check, look on the screen, please. To double check, and we'll want to make sure we're going to run 2 queries to make sure this worked. I'm going to first do a select count star from states. Somebody tell me, what should that return? What? Yeah, and which is 50. I didn't put in the District of Columbia, the U.S. Virgin Islands, etc. We could have added all that stuff. All right, but I just left it like that. So put in select count star from states, execute, and notice I get 50 right there. All right, and then to further double check, just remove. So you just have select star from states and run the query again, and you should see in here, once you do that, all 50 of your states. This wasn't anything fantastic, but there was no table in there that allowed us to basically create a drop-down list of our states. Now, what I could have done, there are really right now, I think there's 5 states in the actual database. There was Texas, I think California, I put in a Missouri one, there's Washington, and that might even be it. So we could have had a drop-down with just those. Does that make sense? We could have done that. All right? Now, what we want to do is we want to take that and make this stuff available to what we're working on. So when I look here and I open this up and I go down to my tables and I open it up, you can see states is in there. Please do that with yours and verify that it's in there. All right, and again, if for some reason it's not, let me know. But if your queries worked, it sure as heck should be in there. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so all we've done is we've gone in and we've added a new, literally, we added a new table into here. All right? All right, then I'm going to close that query window because I don't need it anymore. And if it says, do you want to save it? No. All right, and that's totally fine. All right, that's what I wanted to do to start with. So it sounds as though everybody was able to do that okay, so you now have a new table in there. Now, there is a problem, and we're going to fix that momentarily. You guys all have a problem now. I don't have yet because I fixed it. What do I mean? Well, I want to show you. Let me close this. All right, let me close this too. I don't need to have that dinging all the time. All right, so what I want to do now in my project, this one that I'm working on in here, well, right now, if we can all do this, but I'll just do it on mine. If you bring this up on yours, you don't have the states table in there yet. We're going to fix that in just a minute so that you do have it in there. But as of right now, it's not on yours. All right, and the other thing I should have done, didn't, I'll try to go back if I think about it, is I should have set up foreign keys. In other words, the states, I think, what do we have? We've got products, no. Order details, no. Orders, no. So customers has a state. See that? That should be keying into this one. See what I'm saying? And same thing with employees. And there might be another one. I think vendors as well. So I think those 3, I should have set up foreign keys. I didn't. All right? Wouldn't be hard to do that. So let's go back into the book now. And we're in chapter 19. And probably the only thing I'm going to go through today is this first section in here and how to work with bound text boxes and combo boxes, because I didn't really have a lot of time to start working on the other stuff. What I hope to do tonight is to go through the section on how to work with parameterized queries and how to work with a tool strip control. I'd like to go through that stuff tomorrow. Then on Friday, finish up the chapter. All right? Then next Monday, kind of the same way we've been doing this, when we first start on Monday of next week, we will go over the written test for Chapter 19. Then we will immediately jump into Chapter 20. And we're going to do the same kind of thing then. All right? And then the last week of class, and I think I told you this already, just in case I didn't, I want to show you this. So we will have gone through 1 to 3, 4 to 11, 12 to 16, and 17 through 20. Well, we're not going to go over Chapter 21, how to work with files and data streams. We're not going to go over Chapter 22, how to work with XML files. We're probably not even going to get into the entity framework, and we're not going to do these. But not next week, but the last week of class, which is 2 weeks from now, basically, we're going to look at the how to use link. We will spend 1 or 2 periods on it. All right, I've got to go back and refresh my own self on link. What I'd actually like to do would be to spend 1 period on link, and then, so that would be Monday, then on Tuesday, go over the how to use the entity framework stuff. So go through that. So then really the only thing we've missed in here out of 26 chapters, we would not have done 21, 22, 25, and 26. 26 is very difficult to do because it expects that you have a server that you can deploy your applications on. We don't have that. I suppose we could try to deploy these to IWT rank, and I don't even know if they give us the ability to do that. Not only that, Chapter 25, how to enhance this, believe it or not, we've gone through a lot of this stuff. How to add menus to a form. How to have a multiple form project. So we have actually done, not all of it, I wouldn't lie to you, but we've done most of the material that you see in this chapter. So again, really, the chapters that we have not covered in anything at all will have been 21, 22, and 26. That's my goal. So doing 23 out of the 26 chapters, that's about 90% of the book that we cover. And I mean, you're all to be applauded, and I'm being serious, because with an 850-page book, you know, that means that we've gone through about 750 to 800 of the pages that are in here. All right, has everything made sense? Probably not, but hopefully you've got a good understanding. I will tell you, if you have not heard this already, I may have mentioned this to you before, I may not have, it sounds as though this class will change, possibly even a year from now. When we had our alumni advisory committee meeting earlier this month, when we had that meeting, we were told there were about 15 students, former students or graduates, who said, you know what, none of us are using Windows Forms. We'd rather have you teach us how to write these applications that can go right to the web. And that's probably how this class is going to change. That's my guess. All right. Now, the funny thing is, 2 people there were like, that ain't true. We're still using Windows Forms all the time. Both of those people work for the federal government. And quite often, the government lags behind a little bit with what the rest of industry is doing. All right. So what the plan is right now is when we have our advisory committee meeting in fall, and I don't know if that'll be live, virtual, or whatever, that we want to run this by people who are the movers and shakers on our advisory committee, tell them how we plan on changing this class, and get their feedback. You know, if they would all come back and say, no, keep teaching Windows Forms, we'd keep teaching Windows Forms. All right? But just like I said, just so you're aware of that. So, jumping back then into Chapter 19. Now, Chapter 19 is broken up into a bunch of different sections. The first one, like I said, the one we'll cover right now, not very many pages, but as it says there, how to work with bound text boxes and combo boxes. The first thing will be how to format data. Well, the only thing that I formatted in here, because it was really simple to do, all right, was I think it was on the vendors or products, I did the cost. We could do all those. I'm going to show you how to do one, and then I'm going to expect that you'd understand on how to do the rest, because it's the same thing every time. I will also show you how to bind a combo box to a data source. And when we get to that area, we'll bring into our data designer, we'll bring in that states table. Okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about how to use code to work with a binding source. I haven't done anything with that section, but I did read it. All right, and like I said, then the plan is tomorrow And you'll notice that these sections are 4 or 5 pages each only, but tomorrow we'll go over parameterized queries and how to work with the tool strip control. Now, what does that even mean? Well, if I come back here and I run my program again, so again, this is my copy right here, and I just go to employees. This tool strip that's right here, all right, this can be customized. And we will talk about how to do that then tomorrow, all right? And then as mentioned, and if there's time tomorrow, because it's only about 4 pages, I wouldn't mind looking at this too. An enhanced customer maintenance application. This is one from the book. Since you got all that material at the beginning of the semester, you have that. All right, and if for some reason you don't, you'll just have to let me know. Then on Friday, we'll go over this, how to work with a data grid view control, and then go over their customer invoice application. All right, then when we get to that point, the plan will be, as I've already mentioned to you, when we get, come on, here next week, how to use ADO.NET to write your own data access code. Well, literally what that is saying is these wizards are all fine and dandy, but sometimes you want to go beyond what the wizards allow you to do. Sometimes you might want to be able to customize some stuff. My hope is, and again, I've got to go back and reread that. I'm not going to lie to you. But my hope is what I'd like to do when we get to there, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, if it'll work or not, but what I'd like to do, let me run this again. Now, if you look on the vendors here, that's the way phone numbers typically look. They don't typically look like this, where they're broken down into 2 areas. So what I'd like to do would be to write a customization in there where we glue that stuff together and turn it into one field, in the worst case, or in the best case. Otherwise, at least if we have to keep them as 2 fields, be able to put in this, cut down that size like crazy, and push this over, all right? So I wanted to start looking as hopefully professional as possible. This isn't terrible, all right? But again, that's the way that it actually should look, in my opinion, all right? Now, one thing about that, and hopefully this makes sense to you, if you remember, this field here is set up in both the employees table and the customers table. In both cases, it's set up as a small int. We may have to end up changing the data type. I don't know, all right? But we'll see that when we get to that point, all right? Okay. So again, that'll be the plan then for next week. Okay, the chapter's about the same size. And then we'll jump right into, as I mentioned to you, Chapter 23 and look at Link, and Chapter 24 and have a quick look at ADO.NET. All right. Forgot what page that was, so I'm just going to grab it. So going back then to Chapter 19. Now, hopefully when we go through this, because it's a little hinky the way that it works, if you try it, you go, hey, I did what you said and it doesn't work, then just let me know and we can work through it together. That's not a problem at all. All right? So, again, we're going to go through this first section. So when you look at this, it says in the last chapter, you learn the basic skills for developing applications using data sources and data sets. We did some customization, if you remember. We did this where we first went in and we literally just brought out each field individually. Then we used the data grid view. So we've done it both ways. All right. So it says in here we're going to learn some additional skills for building data apps that way. Specifically, we learn how to work with bound controls. If something is bound, for lack of better words, it's dependent upon something. All right. It's connected to it however you want to look at it. Next, how to use parameterized queries. Again, I've mentioned this to you before, but I'm going to say it again. and that is with a parameterized query, as the program is running, I mean, wouldn't it, I'm asking you this question, and this is basically what we're going to get to. But in my opinion, at least, wouldn't it be nice if, I'll bring up the vendors. This is going to, if I run this query, it's going to show me vendor 1 in here, and I can go and click up here, and I can go through any one. But if I want vendor 17, right now, I believe I got to click through the first 16 records. You know, I've used this kind of analogy before. It's like the difference between, most of you don't even probably know what a cassette tape is. But back in the day, if my favorite song was song 8, I had to either fast forward through the first 7 or listen to the first 7. Well, then we got CDs where you could just choose the one you wanted. That's what we want to be able to do. So we might come in here and do some customization up here and ask if ask you to enter in a vendor ID. So if you know what that vendor ID is, boom, you'd be able to choose it. Even better than that, wouldn't it be better that rather than putting in the vendor ID, if we had a drop-down list and you had the vendor names? And if you chose that vendor name and you click the button, it brings you up that vendor. Now, with what we're doing, we've got 40 vendors in here, something like that. It's not terrible. But imagine you had imagine you're Walmart. They've got a few more vendors than 40. And there's probably no way anyone is talented enough that they can remember all those vendor numbers or those IDs. So you want to make it as simple for somebody to use as possible. That's what our ultimate goal is. All right. Again, how to customize the generated toolbars and how to work with the data grid view control. We've already been working with the grid view, but there are some things we have not yet looked at that we will look at by the end of this week. All right. So they go through what we'll do, fine, and we'll take a look at it. Now, it says there in the last chapter, you learn how to use bound text boxes to work with the data in a customers table. However, it says because the columns in that table contain string data, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot we had to do with it. Everything was a string. Well, again, what I'm going to ask, if you've gotten to this point where you've been creating this like I mentioned to you, all right, I'm going to show you, I'm going to go in and I've already changed the one for one table, I'm going to change the one for the other table. It's not a difficult procedure at all to do, all right? So it says to do that, you use the formatting and advanced binding dialog box. It says from this box, you can select the format you want. So there are different formats. In other words, it depends on what it is you are trying to format. Okay. All right. It says in this figure, for example, the currency format is being applied to the text box that is bound to the unit price of the products table. And that's pretty much what I want to do. And that is to bring up this right here. Okay? And is it hard? It's different until you've done it once or twice. Is it difficult? I didn't think it was. I think if I can do it, you can do it. All right? So, as they say in here, what you want to do is to display this, you select the text box whose data you want to format, you expand the data bindings group in the properties window, and then you click the ellipsis button that appears when you select the advanced option. Whoa, what the heck is all that? So I'm going to go back into here, and I did it yesterday, and it worked. So I'm hoping that if we do it again today, there won't be a problem with it. We'll see. But when I start looking through here, well, you know already main is just a bunch of buttons. So there's nothing in main that I have to worry about. So looking at it in order here, we've got customers. Well, later we want to do this phone, but there shouldn't be anything in here that we have to worry about. So I'm not going to worry about customers. Employees, same thing. Eventually we want to get the phone and format that, but there's nothing else we have to worry about. So I'm going to get rid of that. Orders. Well, those are just dates. Now we could actually go in and format that order date and that ship date to anything we wanted. We could set it up in any kind of format. In fact, if you use it like this, it's going to automatically set it up as a date picker control. You may have noticed that, you may not have. But the rest of the stuff, I shouldn't have to change anything, so I don't have to worry about that one. All right, so next would be order details. Well, there's one, the order detail quoted price. Now I could do the quantity ordered, but as it's set up as an integer, all right, I didn't do anything with it. I suppose we could probably set it up so that it would have a comma, etc. in it if we wanted to do that. I didn't think that was that big of a thing. All right. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at what they say to do here. So it says to display this, select the text box whose data you want to format, expand the data bindings group in the properties window. I don't know about you, I found this really confusing because they didn't show you a picture. They showed you the final picture. They didn't show you how to get there. Does that make sense? So let's talk about how you get there. So with this highlighted right here, the problem is what you have to do is you have to click something in your properties window that we've never looked at before. And that is, you want to come over to the one way on the end here that says categorized. So click that one, the categorized. You may have to click it a couple times. I don't know why. But it should put them into categories. And when you do that, there's one when you go down that says data. I don't know if you can see this. Hopefully you can. So I clicked over here until it gave me a categorized list. All right? So that's the first thing to do. All right. Again, I just want to follow their lead here. So expand the data bindings group. All right. So is one of these say data bindings? Yes, this one does. See this? This has got the plus sign here, so I'm going to expand that by clicking on it. And then you'll notice it says advanced, it says tag, and it says text. All right, hopefully you're following along then. So it says click the ellipsis button and select the advanced option. So again, I'm going to come back here, and where it says advanced, I'm going to just click on the word advanced, and it brings up this ellipsis. I'm going to click on the ellipsis, and it says, what do you want? Well, this is just my text, right? But what I want is I want it in currency format, and I want it to have 2 decimal places. If you didn't want to, you could change it to 0. I don't think that most places, at least in this country, you usually see it one way or the other. All right, but I know that there are places that are like, don't bother me with dollars and cents. But, you know, when you've got everything under $1, you know, if it was Dollar General or one of those places that had stuff for 99 cents, you bet you'd want to put it with 2 decimal places. All right, that's it. So I'm going to click OK. All right, I'm going to save. I'm going to run this again, and then I'm going to go over and look at my order detail quoted price, which previously was not changed. So order details, and there's my price. And you'll notice it now has a $sign, it has a comma, and it's formatted to 2 decimal places. Now, I had previously gone in, so again, nothing to do in customers here, nothing to do in employees here right now. In orders, nothing. Order details, just did it. Categories, no. Products, I did the product price. I'm assuming you could go back and do this same type of operation on the product price. All right. Product vendors, well, I'm going to change that one too. All right. And then finally, vendors, nothing to do there right now, at least. All right. So I'm going to stop my run. And again, what did we say? Well, we've already changed this one here. All right. So we've already got that one done. I've already done the one in products, but I'm just going to show you anyway, because again, all I did, same kind of thing. Click right here. Went over and inside of here, again, went down again to data. You know, it went through the whole rigmarole, so to speak, that I just showed you and did the same exact thing. So I've done that. That's already been done. And then I have to go back to my product vendors and do the same thing with the wholesale price. All right. Any questions on this? So again, I can come back to here, click on my data bindings, open that up, go to the Advanced tab, click here, text, currency, 2 decimal place, click OK, do a save. Now when I come back to my product vendors table, you'll notice that that one is done. All right, that makes sense to everybody? I mean, those kind of cosmetic changes are fairly simplistic, in my opinion, for whatever that is or isn't worth. All right, so that one's done. And again, my order details, that one's done. And let's see, my product price is also done. All right. Now, one thing, I just wanted to show you this. If you look up on the screen, I know you've seen this before, but I want to mention, first of all, I screwed that one up. This product ID on mine, I'm going to have to change that. It should have been a label. See that? Because you can change it. You should never allow the user to change that. I've already mentioned it to you. Notice, if I jump around here, that's a label. That's a label. That's a label. That's a label. Anything that says ID, except the one I screwed up on, that's a label. That is. So I'm going to have to change that one right there. So, okay, I want to change that. How do I do that? All right, I'm just going to show you right now because I want to change it. So I'm going to go back there to products. In fact, not there. Stop the run and go back to my FRM product right here. So this one should have been a label. It wasn't, but it should have been. So I'm just going to delete this, but I'm going to keep the actual label that's here. All right. Then I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to, under products, notice the product ID right now looks just pretty regular. But if I click on it, I can now click the down arrow and choose label, and it gets a letter A there to show that it's a label. Then if I drag that out again, I'm just going to throw it out here. I don't want this heading, product ID. I don't want that, so that's gone. But I do want this label that's here. Now I've got to come back in and I got to format it like I've got the rest of mine formatted. So I'm going to come in here, 16, bold, Arial. I just made them all the same thing because I thought it would be easier to do it like that. Whoops. Arial, boom, that's done. All right. And I don't know, looks pretty decent. It's not fantastic, but it looks pretty good. And I'm going to lock that control into place. And now when I come back and I go over to my products, you'll notice that now I cannot change that. They should have all been like that. That was an oversight on my part, but that said, that's a good thing because I was able to show you that. All right, and everybody does stuff like that. So that was products. Product vendors is okay, and vendors is okay. All right, so let's go back. Let's finish this section here by talking about the other thing that's in here. All right. Again, you can read that stuff yourself. I will tell you, I did this. I was in fact, I could not remember how to add a table to my data set designer, which is what we're going to do right now. I couldn't remember how to do that. So I went out and sure enough, under docs.microsoft.com, add a database table or other objects to an existing data set. That's what we're going to do right now. I couldn't remember how to do it. All right, not to scare any of you, but just so you know, when you get older, you start to not remember things as well as you used to when you were younger. All right, so it says to do this, it's basically a 4-step process. I'm going to show you each step in just a second. Number 1, click the Dataset node in the Solution Explorer to bring up the Dataset Designer. If you go, I don't know what that is, you'll see it in a minute. Second, click the Data Sources tab. You've already done this. The problem is, right now, it's got all of the tables selected. Right? Wrong. The states one isn't selected. So we're going to select the states one. That states table, we're not going to make a special form for that. It's going to be used so that we can burrow into it and get its information for the state in whatever field that has got a state in it. All right, so that's what we're going to do. All right, so as it says, right-click the dataset node, do the configure, and once you do that, you just add it. Then it's added to the dataset designer. So that's what we're going to do right now. All right, so what you actually have to do is you have to, hopefully you didn't close it, but you've got to go back into here. All right. In fact, maybe we don't. I think we can probably do it from here. So let's see. Yep. All right. So if yours is not showing data sources down here right now, and I don't know if yours is or is not, but if it's not, you should be able to go under View, and it's probably under Other Windows, Data Sources. Everybody see that? So if it's not showing on your screen right now, that's how you bring it up. View, Other Windows, Data Sources. All right? And then it should bring it up. And if yours isn't split like this, you can do that. But even if it's not going to hurt anything. So that really gets us to where we want to be in this write-up. So click the Dataset node in the Solution Explorer. Well, we haven't done that yet, but we're going to in just a second. All right? So you should be able to, where it says Sales Order, right mouse click on there. It's the only thing there. And we want to choose Configure Data Source with Wizard. Third one down. All right. Take a second to fill up, but this should look familiar to you. I'm going to expand my tables. All right. And yours does not have states checked. I did it already, so mine has states checked. But check that and then click Finish. Once you do that, at least what is supposed to happen is when you go back to your XSD file, this one, you should now have states in it. Now you can move it around to anywhere you want to move it around to, but the point is it is now available along with everything else. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, because the next thing that we do, again, it's a little bit hinky as far as what you do and how you have to do it. All right, I'm just following their rules. You know, again, you're going to hear this term, especially you guys here, but you guys will hear it next semester too. And I've used this term before. This is the API, or the Application Program Interface, for this language. In other words, it's the set of rules that if you want to do things, certain operations, you've got to follow. I've used the word API before, or the acronym, and I've said it's kind of like a software contract. All right, where the software says, we will provide you these options, and you in return say, fine, I will use them the way they're supposed to be used. Does that mean you can't go in and put in some hacks, etc.? Quite often, yeah, you still can. All right, so let's jump back. Jump back into the book. So this next section here, how to bind a combo box to a data source. All right, so it says what we want to be able to do is display all of the rows in one table to allow us to update the column or columns in another table. This should make sense to each one of you that, again, right now we have to manually, have to manually put in the state if you put in a new record. All right, and it's, you know, you might look at that and say, you know what, it's much easier to just put in the state myself, to put in WA, as opposed to having to click. That may be the case, that may not be the case as far as how you feel. But again, I've already mentioned to you, one advantage is you've got a finite list in here, all right, with 50 values in it. You don't have an infinite list, all right? So, and the other thing is, yeah, this is how we're doing it here, but what if we eventually do it where, hey, wouldn't it be nice where we've got category ID in another table to have the name of the category instead of category ID? I think it would be. We only have 6 categories. I don't know about you right now. I can't tell you what category 4 is. Maybe you know, but I don't. But it would be nice, much nicer to have that as a drop down and to be able to use it that way. That's what we want to build toward. Okay? All right. So it says the easiest way to create a combo box like this is to use the data source wizard to change the control that's associated with a column in the main table to a combo box before you drag it out onto the form. What does that mean? That means this. And again, I have asked you to go in and do this, so I don't know where you are on your journey to doing this. All right, but let me grab one of these that has a state in it. Vendors does. That's the one I changed already. Let me go change another one. All right, just so you see it. We'll use employees. That's fine. So this is the employee state right here. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this. Now, the way I'm doing it, is there a better way of doing it? Possibly. This is a smart tag up here where you can do some finagling with this. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to get rid of this. So this is the state. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to hit delete. So it's gone, and it's now gone. All right. Then I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to go down into my employees table. All right. Everybody's with me? Because we're just about finished with this part of the section. So I'm going to go to the state right here, and again, I'm going to right mouse click. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to the state, and I'm going to click the down arrow, and now I'm going to choose combo box. Okay? Now, I don't want to drag it right here because it's going to put that label out there as well. So I'm just going to grab this, and I'm going to put it out here in an empty area. So there it is. All right? And I'm going to get rid of, I don't need that label, so I'm going to get rid of that. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it in here. Looks like it's a little big, so I'm going to move this one over a little. All right? And I'm going to make it the same size as the rest of them just so it doesn't look that terrible. So 16 bold. You didn't have to do this, but this is, I just thought it looked nicer that way. So there it is. Does that make sense to everyone? It's not been bound yet, but I put that in. Any questions on what I just did? All right. So let's just keep following along in the book here. So it says, to start with, you'll need to use the data bound items checkbox to display the binding properties as shown here. We'll look at that in just a minute. One thing about this, if you would please look up on the screen. This thing, it's not hard to use, but I have found that at least occasionally, if I lock my control, you know how to lock controls and why you lock them, it won't show the smart tag. So if your smart tag, this little arrow here is not showing, try to unlock the control. I don't know, I didn't know there was any kind of correlation between those two, but there appears to be. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm just going to follow, I think it's the use data bound items, but we're going to find out. Yep. So I'll do that again. I'm going to click on this right here. So I'm clicking on the state. I'm clicking the smart tag right there. And I'm clicking the checkbox that says use data bound items. All right. You all with me? So it says data.
Every time that I open up the dataset configure with wizard, my entire program crashes. For me as well, yeah.
What's that?
Every time we try to open up the wizard, it crashes.
Boy, well then we're going to have to Google that to see why. All right, because I've never heard of that happening before. I believe both of you, but I don't know what it is. Well, let me just run through these steps, okay, so you can at least see what's going on. So under the data source, I'm going to click here. And I don't want something from customer. I don't want something from employee. What I want is other data sources, and I've got to open them all up. No, that one. And then I open up this one, and lo and behold, what's in there? States. See that? So I'm choosing states. That'll be my data source. And what member do I want to display from there? Well, what I want to display is the state abbreviation. All right. Then notice it says value. Have you ever seen this when you filled out a form and either it asks you for your state name or your state abbreviation? Let's suppose that in this case, it asks for the abbreviation because this is set up as 2 characters. So in that case, I would really want the value to be the same thing. Does that make sense? But if I didn't, if I wanted it to go into the database as Mississippi as opposed to MS or something like that, then I could choose, instead of value member state abbreviation, I could use state name. That all make sense? All right. Then it says selected value. All right. And now I went back and I said, this is the employees table. So I want the employees state. So that's how mine looks. Now again, if yours, like you said, if yours is crashing, I believe you. I just have not heard of that happening before. So we're going to have to try to look into that. All right. So that's everything. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to save. And I'm going to run this. And I'm going to go over to my employees table. And you'll notice, there it is. Now it still has the original value in there. But if I try adding in new records, there won't be any value in there. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So if I wanted to, you know, what is this? This is Auburn, Washington. If I said it was Auburn, Maine, I could do that. You can see how easy it is to change that. All right. And there's even stuff that you can do here. I'll put it back to Washington. But it automatically gives this the focus, and that's why it's got the blue highlight around it. But you can remove that, and as soon as you move off of it and move to another field, it goes away anyway. All right. But it's just trying to show you the current field. All right. And then lastly, all I'm going to do is I'm going to run through this one more time, and I'm going to do this with the customers table, just so you see it one last time. All right. So I'm going to stop my run here. I'm going to do a save all, stop my run. And just like we just did almost, I'm going to go over to the customers table. Again, like we just did. This one right here is currently set up. You'll notice when you look over here, customer state text box. I don't want that because I don't want a text box. So again, just as we did previously, I'm highlighting it. I'm hitting the delete key. I'm going down to here. I want to find my customers. I want to find my customer state. Click on it, click the down arrow and choose combo box, then drag it out, remove the label, put that into here. Again, I've got to do a little bit of finagling here to pretty this up, so to speak, and that's locked, so let's unlock it. All right, take this, and again, I'm going to make it 16, just because, again, I like it when they all look the same. So there's that. Okay. Now I'm going to click on here on the smart tag again. I'm going to use the use data bound items. I'm going to go over down to the data source, other data sources, project data sources, sales order data set, and I'm going to find my states again. For the display member, I'm going to make it the state abbreviation. For the value member, I'm going to make it the state abbreviation. For this selected value, again, now I'm going to go back to my customers, and I'm going to choose state. And that should be everything. I'm going to save. Let's run this. Now I'm going to go over to my customers table, and you'll notice I've got the down arrow, and there's everything. All right? So I will try to look this up, okay? And you guys, if you haven't, maybe you could do the same. I've not heard of that happening before. I don't know what the problem is. Hopefully we can fix that. All right. I mean, if I have to, I have no problems in giving you what I've got. But I wanted you to build it just so you can go through the trials. And I did it. But so you can go through the trials and tribulations yourselves of actually building this out.
Are you using the thing he sent to us last week or Monday?
I rebuilt it myself.
Built it yourself.
All right. Okay, so last thing then, so I thought we'd only go until 9, but it's a little later, but let's just finish this up quickly. So I just went through these steps on how to bind this. This is how I did it. All right, so states, state name, again, they've got the name in the code because they're displaying the whole name and they're putting it in the customer. So it's very similar, all right? And if you need more, this is what each one of those things means. All right, I tried to explain it to you. Again, I think that quite often it makes more sense to run through an example with you as opposed to doing something else. All right, and again, a little bit more verbiage down here if you want to read that. So finally, the last part of this, so this is, just give me a second, we'll go over these 2 pages and then we're finished. All right, so it says here how to use code to work with a binding data source. It says when you use the binding navigator toolbar to work with a data source, it works by using properties and methods of the binding source object. In other words, it's the way that that toolbar can communicate with the table that it's referring to. All right? It says in the 2 applications presented in Chapter 18, you saw the code generated for the Save button and how it called something called end edit. All right? And again, is that important? Well, it depends on how you're doing this. Do you want to save, etc.? All right. So it says Figure 19.3 presents some of the properties and methods for working with a binding source. If you review these, it says, yeah, it's real easy to say, if you review these, you shouldn't have any problem figuring out what they are and how they work. Well, that may or may not be true. All right. But it says you can use the first 4 methods to modify the rows that are stored in a data source associated with a binding data source. So what does that mean? Well, look at it. We've got these members right here. So in other words, the add new is basically when we're using the toolbar is calling an add new method. Does that make sense? To actually add a new record. All right, if nothing is filled in, we could probably set it up. So again, if we wanted our default state to be Missouri, we probably could do something like that. All right, end edit says saves changes to the current row. Now, much of this stuff is going to be called automatically for you when you are running this, all right? And what do I mean? Well, I'm going to try this. We're going to find out right now. But if you look here, let's see. I'm going to go over to this is my program here. I'm going to do a save all, and I'm going to get out. All right? Now, I went back again and actually did add this. So this is under that Data Designer demo I gave you. I've now got Data Designer Demo and Data Designer Demo V2. All right. So this is, I'm sorry, not V2, just 2. All right. It should be set as my startup project already. But when I come in here and I start and I go to employees, you'll notice it's still the dropdown. So that stuff was all saved. All right. So those changes that I've made have been saved. All right. And again, I'm not sure how this is going to work, so we're going to try something here. So for the state, I'm going to change this to Missouri, okay? And I'm going to click the save that's right here. Everybody with me? I clicked the icon that said save. Now, I'm going to try this in 2 ways. I'm going to stop my run. I'm going to run it again. I'm going to go to customers, and you'll notice it didn't change. All right? We are working with our own local copy. There's other stuff that we'd have to do that we'll talk about in later chapters as far as if we wanted to actually change that permanently. All right? Wasn't sure if it would save it or not. I didn't think it would, and I was correct. All right. So you can read these yourselves, but it explains, most of them should make sense. End edit. Well, that assumes you're editing something and you're done. Cancel edit. It assumes you're editing something and you don't want to save it. All right. Add new. To add a new one. Remove current. To get rid of whatever one is your current one. All right. The other ones we've all looked at already. We actually went in there and you saw how we used that position counter. If you remember, we had a first button, a previous button, a next button, and a last button. All right. When we did it ourselves. And then we went back in and we used the data grid, and those were all created for us. So again, it says here, the binding source ensures that all controls are bound to the same data table. The ones that are bound are synchronized. That way, as it says, when you move to another row, they'll display the values for that row. Well, that's pretty important. So in other words, it says, when I showed you that first customer, that was all the information for the first customer. And if I move to the second one, it's got to immediately repopulate with all those fields from the second one. All right? So it says if a form provides for updating of rows in a data table, moving from one row to another causes any changes made to the current row to be saved. It depends on how you've got it set up. All right. Now it says when you add a new row, the position property is set to one more. Doesn't that sound familiar? All right. We've already worked with the position property. Finally, as it says, you can use the end edit and cancel edit to either cancel changes or save changes to an existing row that was added using the new method. Now, I was under the presumption, wrong, that when you were running this, all right, when you were running this and you click this button right here, that it did save things. Now, I don't know if anything's going to happen, but if I double click on the button, nope, nothing's happening. But in a later chapter, it might even be in this chapter, otherwise it's in a later chapter, they talk about how you can go in and customize the toolbar. So we will talk about that. I think it probably is even tomorrow already. All right? So again, if you have those problems, I'm not sure why you would have them. Yes?
I looked it up, and someone complained in 2018, and Microsoft said it was so rare they didn't feel like this again, basically.
There you go. Yeah, that's nice. And, you know, that would have made me real happy when I was building it if it had happened to me. All right? Years ago, many years ago, when I was working at the other college that I used to be at, I don't know how, but I got in touch, Microsoft Tech, with a guy who was pretty high up. And I sat and explained the problem to him, and he was like, well, you sound like you know what you're doing. He even said something along those lines. And then he said, okay, now, where are you calling from? Well, I'm calling from Podunk, Wisconsin, and I'm calling from a dinky little technical college. The funny thing is, when he found that out, he said, just a minute. And then he came back and he said, I'm going to have to put you on the phone with somebody else who literally didn't know what the hell they were talking about. But they basically came back and told me, you're not important enough. You're not a paying customer. So yeah, you can complain about it, but we're not going to change it. See what I'm saying? If somebody who uses this, so if Walmart would use this and they'd complain, it would be changed almost immediately or fixed almost immediately. All right. So I don't know. Do they have any kind of workaround?
I might have to try to rebuild the connection or something. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, so that's what I had for today. So again, Christopher, Gabriel, James, I don't know. Let me walk over there quick. Just take.
I looked at the email. It said it was given. Did you get?
Yeah, I was good.
It said tomorrow.
Okay, then he changed it because he had said today, and he said he was coming back tomorrow for the afternoon people.
So
That's fine. Then come back tomorrow. All right. If nothing else, we'll take 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of class tomorrow, and I'll let you go in there and talk to him. Usually, it's a matter of you signing something, so it shouldn't be much. All right. That's it for today then. So if you're still working on this stuff yourselves, please continue on.